Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Ari Talks About Music. I'm Ari, and today I'll be reviewing the new Lucy Dacus album, Forever Is a Feeling. Forever Is a Feeling is the fourth album by the American singer-songwriter Lucy Dacus, who has released such albums, including her previous one, Home Video, and my personal favourite, Historian, which is an album that I really love for just its much more rock-leaning influences, whereas Home Video, while still a fantastic album, and definitely one of her most personal, is much more of a very chill, lo-fi sound. And then Forever Is a Feeling also continues much more of the sound that is very present on Home Video, with this album not only following in Home Video's footsteps by just having a much more lo-fi, very folk pop kind of sound to it, but also with many of the lyrics on this album also being deeply personal. Big Deal is the first full-length track on this album, just being a very nice, very chill lo-fi pop song. The vocals and the guitar playing being so soft does create a really nice atmosphere. However, the percussion, I think, can be a bit overpowering, sounding definitely noticeably louder than a lot of the other instruments in many parts of the song, which just causes a bit of unnecessary contrast, I think. Ankles is much the same, however, it does have a slightly more upbeat feel to it, which gives this album this nice progression in its first few tracks. Limerence is very stripped back, being pretty much just Lucy's voice and a piano. And while the track as a whole is very soft and very chill, I actually find it really interesting to literally just listen to the piano and what the piano is doing for this whole track, with everything else that's going on just being very simple and very straightforward. However, if you really listen to the piano, you actually realize how many weird and interesting things it does throughout the track. But because it's so quiet, you really do just have to listen out for it. Modigliani does have quite nice arrangements, and there are still quite a lot of layers to the instruments too. However, despite that, I think that this track does actually just lack a lot of substance, being a just perfectly okay but quite boring folk pop track that just does very little to actually remain interesting. Talk is a track that I think definitely just lacks a lot of structure and a lot of coherence, with there just being so much happening all at the same time, and there seems to have been very little thought into how it's all organized, which I think is actually quite a shame because this track definitely had a lot of potential, particularly with how amazing the vocals sound, but unfortunately they just get drowned out by everything else that's happening at the same time. For Keeps is just a really nice little song that almost acts as an interlude with how short it is. The guitar playing is really nice and soft, and I really love how the vocals really do get a chance to shine on this track that kind of makes up for the lost potential on the previous track. The title track has a really nice chord progression with this really beautiful piano in the intro that does make a few appearances again throughout the song. And just the progression as a whole on this track just feels really natural, with it building to this really nice climax that is still very soft and one could even argue underwhelming, but given the general just simplicity and calmness of the album, I think it fits in really well and is definitely one of my favourite moments. Come Out is a very simple and very light-hearted track that just shows off some nice lush sound effects and overall a really nice atmosphere. And on the whole, I think that this is just one of those tracks that really thrives off of its simplicity. Best Guess definitely feels like quite a filler song, with it overall just feeling very predictable. The vocals and the guitar playing on this track are still really nice, but outside of the basic features like that, there really is very little I like about it. Bullseye has this absolutely beautiful chorus, with the vocals being so soft and still evoking so much emotion. And Hosier's feature on this track also just fits in really well and just acts like a very natural part of the song. Most Wanted Man definitely is a track that I think feels very out of place, with the guitar playing just sounding so much happier and so much more upbeat than the rest of the album, which then also I think sounds especially strange, layered with the much softer and sadder vocals. In the latter half, the song definitely does start to pick up a little bit and sounds more just consistently upbeat, which does make the track itself flow a bit better, but it still doesn't fix the issue of it just sounding very out of place on the album as a whole. And finally, Lost Time is just a really nice closing track that I think rounds up the album very well, with it just being so soft and atmospheric and building up to this really nice outro. And overall, it just makes me very glad that this album at least ends on a high, if nothing else. And so overall, I think that what this album lacks in musicality, it definitely does make up for in its lyrics, with some of these songs having some of the most deeply personal lyrics in her discography so far, especially with lines on track like Limerence, where she says, "I'm thinking about breaking your heart someday soon, and if I do, I'll be breaking mine too," which things like that just feel like an absolute gut punch, definitely being one of the biggest highlights of the album for me overall. And so while this album is far from the absolute best that Lucy Dacus is capable of, it still does have its merit with just how personal it is, even if it isn't that interesting to listen to musically. And so overall, I'll be giving this album a 6 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to listen to this album yourself and tell me your thoughts below. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and please leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, and remember to stay hydrated.